Is this okay? Well, I'm going to get started. I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you for coming by this morning. How many people came before they knew there was pizza? That's pretty good. So the rest of you came once you heard there was pizza. I'm all right with that. I know you've all got busy days, so I do appreciate you coming by. This is the last all-hands meeting that we're doing. I did several of them back in January. One of the ones that we had in council chambers, we were going to videotape for the benefit of those who couldn't come and listen to one, and weren't able to videotape it, so we wanted to do a makeup one so that we could videotape it, plus give an opportunity for folks to come by who didn't get a chance to come to a prior all-hands meeting. So thank you for being here. I've got about 30 minutes of information to walk through with you, and then lots of opportunity for you to ask me questions about things that you're curious about. I do want to introduce some leadership team members who are here this morning. If you haven't met Kathy Blakeman, she's our new Human Resources Director. She's sitting here in front. Of course, you know Chief Smith. He's a member of our leadership team for the entire city. And then Jim Hayes, Deputy City Manager. He's going to be reviewing some of the information for you today. All right, let me get my clicker. I started filling in as city manager, so it was a very successful 2013 in many ways. Back to budget performance. Two reasons why that gap was narrower than the $2.5 million that was projected. One is our revenue was a little higher than we anticipated in the budget, but the other more significant reason is employees throughout the organization did a very good job of controlling expenses. There's a good history of fiscal responsibility in the
Belmar. It is the right vision, developed and embraced by the community in partnership with the right developer. It's the contributions of thousands of individuals and its execution, each one leaving their mark. It's people putting down roots and a community making a conscious choice about its future and its history. The result is more than real estate. It's perhaps a glimpse of the suburban landscape of the future.
Joining me now is Joyce Downing, Mayor of North Glen. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why is urban redevelopment important for a city like North Glen?
But also projecting expenses so that we can maintain current levels of services. When the City Council approved the budget, it was important to them to maintain levels of services, even though they recognized that based on conservative estimates of revenue is not going to be enough to cover our expenses. They could have done a number of things. The most obvious thing they could have done is cut back on services, cut back on our expenses in an effort to balance to that projected revenue. City Council believes very strongly in the level of services that we provide in this community and didn't want to cut services. So one of their key themes going into the budget was, staff, tell us the resources you need to maintain current levels of services. The bad news is that resulted in a budget that shows a gap of $2.7 million between what we think our revenue will be and what we anticipate our expenses will be. Budgets are supposed to be conservative, in my opinion. They're supposed to, if anything, overestimate what we're going to need to provide services, but it tends to be very conservative when estimating revenue. And with good work throughout the organization, which I expect we will do, we've done it every year since I've been here, we'll do a good job again of controlling expenses while also looking for opportunities to increase revenue. The 2014 work plans are a great way for us to make sure as an organization that we're focused on the most important work first. There's lots of things we could be doing on a daily basis. We don't have enough resources to get it all done, so the work plans help us prioritize what our focus will be throughout the year. It's important for you to know, as employees in the police department, what's in the police department's work plan. The chief, the deputy chiefs, and the command staff should be talking with you about the police department's work plan for 2014, but it's also important for you to see what's on that work plan in the rest of the organization. It's not uncommon for you to be focused on what you're doing.
It's from Denver and an hour from the mountains. By 1989, though, downtown Golden was in desperate need of some flesh and blood. To add that vitality, Golden City Council created the Golden Urban Renewal Authority, or GURA, in 1989, and for the next few years, the city completely rebuilt its main street called Washington Avenue. This project upgraded water, sewage, and drainage, changed parking from angled to parallel, installed wider sidewalks with brick pavers, trees, and planters, and replaced the highway-style lighting with antique acorn-type lamps. Creating GURA and the new streetscape set the stage for downtown Golden's renaissance over the next generation. It went from ghost town to destination town. For nearly 25 years now, GURA has been working with public and private.
Additionally, and that's the entire work plan for the entire organization. We put it there intentionally so that anybody could take a look at it and see what's going on throughout the organization. Also, every quarter we provide an update to City Council on how we're doing. We think it's important to be transparent to the community about what we're doing with the tax dollars they pay us every year. And so the work plans give us an opportunity to explain on a quarterly basis why it costs $52 or $53 million to operate and provide services to a city of 48,000 people. As I mentioned, we need to continue looking for ways to grow our revenue. The good news is residential development has started to pick up again in the northern part of the city. If you've been up there recently, you've noticed home construction in just about every subdivision. Home construction by itself is a bit of a double-edged sword. Residential development by itself does not pay for the services that we provide to it. One way of looking at it, if you strictly look at property taxes, for those of you that live in the community, take a look at your tax bill. The amount of property taxes that you actually pay to the city of Commerce City is rather low. For an average home in the northern range, it's about $100 or $125 annually. The challenge is by the time we simply provide trash service, we've lost money on the property taxes that residents pay us. Residential development does do other things for us. It helps drive retail development, helps drive the need for other types of non-residential business in the city. And that's our focus. Our focus is not necessarily residential development because, again, the number of services that residents demand versus what they contribute in tax revenue does not have a positive fiscal impact on the city. Other development, especially retail, has a very positive impact. They generate way more in taxes than we provide back to them in services. So the goal for us is to continue looking for opportunities to attract the right type of development to our community, to increase our revenue without a commensurate increase in demand for services. And actually, Jim is going to, is this the point where I hand it off to you? Talk about economic development? Yeah. And touch on anything in the work plan that I didn't cover. Yeah. Jim's primary responsibility with the organization is to manage the annual work plans. In addition, Jim is also filling in an oversight role for economic development because we're without an economic development director right now.
Great, thank you, Brian. I'm just going to dive in on a couple items on the work plan real briefly. First of all, I'll show it to you. It looks something like this. It's divided up into two areas. There's projects and operations. We identified during our look at this last year is that really 80% of what we do is operations. So we decided to identify two different plans, if you will. The operations plan is showing what we're tracking. It's very data intensive. There may be some policy statements in there, and those are backed up by narratives, but I think a lot of what you do on a daily basis is probably going to be tracked on the operations plan. The project worksheet is really more tying in with the council goals. There's 5 main goals that they've identified. They still want to carry those through for the next year. And let me just read those to you quickly. Develop a balanced and vibrant city economy. Ensure a financially sound city government. Develop and maintain the public infrastructure. preserve and nurture a quality community, and then encourage community involvement, communication, and trust. So what we did with each of the projects and the operations for that matter is we tried to identify which one or multiple goals that those tied into, so when council looks at this, they can see that we're really carrying out what their larger mission is. The other thing I would point out is that there are a lot of cross-departmental efforts that we're focusing on in the plan. I'm not going to go into details about what those are, but just give you a couple of examples. Records retention and records management. That affects the entire organization. We had a great meeting last week led by the clerk's office, but again, everyone in the city is affected by that issue. Compensation philosophy. This is something that we've agreed to look at, especially pursuant to the AFSCME contract we executed last year. We're going to be putting together a multi-departmental team, including some union representatives, to look at that as we go forward for the whole organization. And then another one that's more along the lines of the built environment is the Mile High Greyhound Park. We've had a group of people meeting regularly since we purchased the property about 2.5 years ago. And there's going to be a big milestone tonight where hopefully the council is going to select a preferred developer, and we can really start getting intensive with those negotiations. So just a few more highlights about the work plan. Again, it is on the intranet. I encourage everyone to take a look at it. With respect to economic development, as Brian mentioned, I've been filling in there again as we lost our manager late last year. That division is actually part of the city manager's office. We have 4 full-time employees. We only have 2 of those spots filled right now, so they're very short-staffed, but they're trying to be a little more strategic with what they're doing going forward. We brought in a consultant late last year to do a benchmarking study, and without getting into the details of that, essentially what it is, we compared our community to other communities, not just in the Denver metro area, but around the country that are situated close to a major city, may have an airport nearby, may have a lot of industrial type development. And so we're going to be presenting that benchmarking study to the council in a few weeks, which really then identified more of a detailed work plan for that group in 2014. We really wanted to focus on those core competencies, generating new prospects and bringing more business to the community, having sites that are actually ready for big industrial users or non-residential users that want to locate here. We're going to take another look at our incentive program. We've been rebating sales taxes and use taxes when new projects come in, but we want that to be really, but for the incentive, they would locate here. And what I mean by that is we want to make sure that it's truly an incentive and not a subsidy to get these businesses here. They're going to be providing a lot more support to the Urban Renewal Authority as we get Victory Crossing and the Greyhound Park going. Also looking at marketing and branding, maybe doing some unique things. We had a great forecast breakfast in this room about 10 days ago that was very well attended, which is starting to lead that effort. I think you might ask, why is all this work important on economic development? Well, the whole idea is that as you see the revenues and the expenditures, the only way we can increase those revenues, short of increasing the tax rate again, is really to grow that pie of taxable businesses that we're bringing into our community. So that's what we're really focused on is growing that pie, identifying those new businesses that want to locate here, and really impressing upon everybody from the planners to all of you out talking to people on the street every day, is that we are all in economic development. We are all salespeople for the community. And when people have a good interaction with us or with a planner or getting a building permit, what have you, it really impresses upon them that we're open for business and we really want people to locate here. So that's what I leave you with today, and I'm here to answer any questions too when we get done with the presentation. So thanks.
Thank you, Jim. I mentioned earlier that voters approved a 1% sales tax increase. The city's tax rate prior to Election Day was 3.5%. The city's tax rate is now 4.5%. You see up there that the 2014 budget, I was mistaken, it's $55 million for 2014. But with the passage of Issue 2K, we essentially went from a $55 million corporation to a $65 to $70 million corporation. We expect that initially, that additional 1% will generate about $10 million in additional revenue annually. Because of the ballot language, that $10 million is reserved for specific purposes. We cannot use it to run general city operations. The only exception to that is portions of that $10 million that are used to build new facilities. We are able to use the 1% to operate and maintain those facilities. On the next slide, I'm going to walk through those projects. And so you'll see the list of projects, but also the list of projects that we can use this tax revenue to operate and maintain. The bottom line is we've become a much more complicated organization with the passage of Issue 2K. We've made commitments to get those projects built over the next 5 years, and it's having an impact throughout the organization. But we don't have necessarily general operating revenue to do anything else that we have been doing more easily. So it's created some challenges for us. And as we look to the future, how are we going to get all this work done and continue to offer the services that we have been offering? And it seems to me that Commerce City had a very static population for a number of years. The city was 20 to 25,000 residents for 30 or 40 years since it was originally incorporated. Then starting in 99, 2000, the Northern Range started to explode. In a 10-year period, the population of the community doubled. I think for those of you who were here during that tremendous spurt of growth, I get the sense in talking to people, I started in 2008 on the tail end of that. The sense from folks is everybody was holding on. You were holding on for dear life because growth was happening so rapidly. Then things tapered off 2008, 2009, and the sense that I got coming into the organization at that time, everybody kind of took a collective deep breath and tried to collect themselves, try to catch up on all those things that we weren't able to do during that tremendous growth. And now it's an opportunity to refocus, how are we going to manage change and growth as we go forward? Because the city had been 20 to 25,000 for such a long period of time, I think there's a number of things that we still do like a community that's 20 or 25,000 people might do. We do a lot of things in a rather informal way. I think the police department probably is the best example of having more structure and process to what you do, but you won't find that much structure in the rest of the organization. Structure and process and systems help us do the work that we do every day more efficiently and to a higher level of quality. And it's easier then to train new people as they join the organization. I think there's a need for us to do a lot more of that work and create more structure and process to how we're doing what we're doing every day. We are now a community of 49,000 people. And so what we've started doing is focusing our attention on communities that are 75 and 100,000. How do they operate in ways that are different than how we operate? And what we've found is it's the formalization of the work that they do every day that separates them from us. And so that's going to be a significant focus for us going forward. We had a leadership team retreat just this past Friday. It included members of the leadership team plus division managers throughout the organization. The chief and the deputy chiefs were there along with Annette Peters. And we were talking about this challenge that we have of managing the work, but doing it in a more structured, organized way so that it can be sustainable long-term. Again, we do a lot of things rather informally. We exchange a lot of information informally. And for us to be a sustainably good organization long-term, it's going to be necessary for us to bring more structure to what we're doing. So that'll be a focus going forward. Managing those projects is a significant challenge for the organization. That $10 million a year that we will be getting now in increased tax revenue is going to allow us to borrow about $130 million to build 5 projects over the next 5 years. Here's the list of projects. During the campaign committee referred to it as 5 projects, but to be honest, it's 12 projects. The money that's borrowed will help the city build a new recreation center in the northern part of the city. It'll be located 112th Avenue and Potomac. That will also require improvements to 112th Avenue to connect the rec center to both Chambers and Highway 2. That project alone, by the time you build the recreation center, make all the roadway and other infrastructure improvements, we estimate it being about $57 million. The other list of projects includes building 3 neighborhood parks in the northern part of the city. Neighborhood parks are smaller parks between 10 and 20 acres. Those will be located in Turnberry, where we already own the land, adjacent to Turnberry Elementary School. Frontera Neighborhood Park that'll be built between Second Creek Elementary and Stewart Middle School, and the villages of Buffalo Run East, which is on the east side of Chambers, north of 112th Avenue. We will also be making significant renovations to the existing recreation center, and then also adding an outdoor pool in the southern part of the city. The plan is to build an outdoor pool on the very east end of the Pioneer Park site. The total cost of all those projects, we estimate it being about $130 to $140 million. Additionally, I mentioned earlier that some of that tax revenue will be used to operate and maintain those facilities. Properly operating and maintaining those facilities will cost us between $2 and $3 million a year by itself. So of that $10 million in additional revenue, about $7 to $8 million will be used to retire the debt that we're taking on, and the other $2 to $3 million will be used to operate those facilities once they're built. We do have some fairly tough goals that we've set out for ourselves. We understand the importance of building high-quality facilities. The community expects that from us. We also want to build facilities that are cost-effective to maintain long-term. Because we're using these increased tax dollars to build these facilities, we think it's very important to spend the money wisely and transparently. It's easier than it ever has been in the past for the public to scrutinize what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. So we want to be okay with that. So we want to make sure that the way we're going about building these projects allows us to communicate transparently to the community. And of course, it's important to get the projects done on time. During the campaign committee committed to getting these projects done in 5 years, and we're fully committed to doing that. The bar graph down below shows the rough timeline for all of those projects. There's a lot more information about the projects. If you're interested, contact me, contact Jim. A lot of it's available on the intranet. So what else are we going to be focused on? Those 5 projects, which again are really 12 projects, is a significant bit of extra work for the organization, but it's not the only things that we're going to be focused on over the next several years. We've received a grant from the state of Colorado to widen Highway 2. Oh, I forgot. One of the other projects is widening Tower Road. That's one of those 5 projects that we're building with the tax money. In addition, we received a grant from CDOT to widen Highway 2. That's going to be occurring during the same 5-year period. The deal with the state's going to invest with us to widen Highway 2, and then after that project's completed, the city will take over ownership and maintenance of Highway 2. Jim talked a little bit about the Mile High Greyhound Park. We've made a significant investment in that property. The purpose is to get a return on that investment. Through the selection of a developer tonight, hopefully, we'll start more specific plans to get the property redeveloped in an effort to generate positive cash flow to the city. I mentioned the rail station in Colorado and 72nd Avenue. There's going to be a groundbreaking event this month for work on what's called, it's the North Metro line that'll run from Denver Union Station. Where's it terminating, Jim? Right now it's funded to 124th, so it'll come up through our community, just one station in Commerce City at Colorado and 72nd Avenue. There's some investments we need to make in that area as well. That'll be occurring during the same 5-year period. Also, a significant event occurring for our community that you may have already started to hear about because it's going to impact you quite a bit. The World Lacrosse Championships are occurring here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park in July. I'm told it will be the single largest sporting event ever in the state's history. They're anticipating 100,000 people over a 10-day period, approximately $50 million in total economic impact. The teams are staying down on the DU campus and will practice there, but all of the competition games will occur at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. Some games in the stadium, lots of games out on the fields. 40 teams from around the world will be competing. It's essentially the Olympics of lacrosse. The event only occurs every 4 years. This will be the first time the event has occurred in the United States west of the Mississippi. So it's a significant event for Denver, and it's a tremendous opportunity for the city to get exposure to a worldwide audience. Because of the popularity of the sport worldwide, a lot of the games will be televised. Not only the games in the stadium, but the games on the fields. The city has a sponsorship agreement with U.S. Lacrosse to be the competition city for the tournament. So that enables us to have some signage in places that'll get picked up on television coverage. A lot of the games will be broadcast live on the web. So it really ties in with our economic development efforts to bring exposure to Commerce City as a great place to do business. It'll certainly have a tremendous impact on all of you, as with those 100,000 people here over that 10-day period, there will be a need for lots of additional police presence. So very exciting, but also comes with quite a lot of work for all of us. I talked earlier about becoming a higher functioning organization. And when I talked about budget performance, we get a tremendous amount of work done on what I think is a fairly limited budget. We are not a wasteful organization. We're a very fiscally responsible organization. The key is to continue looking at those opportunities. I know it sounds cliche, let's try and do things more efficiently, but as we bring more structure and systems to the organization, it'll make sure we're doing things consistently across the organization, allows us to do things that we have to do on a regular basis at a higher level of quality on a more repeatable basis, allows us to transition people into the organization more easily. Again, the systems and structure and policies that you have in the police department are not necessarily the things we have in place elsewhere in the organization. Our goal is to take some of the structure that you have that helps you be effective and use that mindset throughout the rest of the organization. We also talked a lot Friday about doing the leadership work of the organization. We've got some significant challenges facing us. One effort that's underway right now is we had a group of employees a couple of years ago that put together a number of recommendations to make us a safer organization. You've been heavily impacted by this. We have a lot of folks that are out hurt right now. The idea is to look and see how we can go about doing our daily jobs in a way that makes that less likely. Not only is it hard to have people out, but it's very expensive for the city to have people out. So the safety team is an example of a group of folks that are coming together to do some of the work of leadership of the organization. It's not just the responsibility of a few to figure out solutions to those problems. I believe you've got to engage people throughout the organization to solve some of these challenges. The city, back in the middle of the boom period, 05, 06, was using more interdepartmental teams to solve some challenges, and we're moving back in that direction of engaging more people in the organization to get some key projects done. This is the last slide that tends to put a bow on this idea of where are we headed. We've got a tremendous amount of work to do, and I believe the key to getting that done as effectively as possible is making sure that we're aligning the work that we do every day to the goals the City Council has set, and those things that are operational that we have to do year in and year out, bringing more policy and structure and systems to how we do that work. Again, we're finding that that's how other cities that are larger, more complicated, more sophisticated than us, that's how they tackle those challenges. There's more structure to how they're doing the work that you're doing, the work that they're doing every day. They're a less informal organization, a more formal organization, and that's what I see as the future for us. So that's an awful lot of talking. I think it went more than 30 minutes. But we're now at the point where I can answer your questions. One of the nice opportunities and reason why I like meeting in smaller groups. Jerry Flannery, when he was here, he preferred a larger all-hands meeting. There would just be one, and we'd have everybody attend. To me, this seems like a better way to answer your questions and have a little bit more interaction. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Go ahead, Rob. Great question. I'm going to let Jim answer that. This site's another opportunity to create some economic development, but it's not without its challenges.
We have a 10-year master development agreement with Cronkite Sports. They're obligated by that agreement to purchase 200 acres of land by October 25th of this year. So we're about 9.5 years into that deal. I can tell you we've been meeting with them pretty regularly since the first of the year. They've really ramped up their interest. Without saying too much, I can tell you that they've got a proposal to us on the table that would probably comply with that contract term. They also, of course, want some things in return, and so we're going to be having an executive session tonight with City Council and talk to them about that. I can tell you that there are some public things, if you will, that are known. They do have a site plan that they've developed for the whole site. They've set up a little sales office in the top floor of the stadium on that top level, suite level. So if you're in there at all, I think you can walk by and look at it. It's a pretty public area. But the first site that they're probably going to be developing is the space between the Civic Center and the stadium on the north side of 60th. They have that planned as about 60 to 70,000 square feet of indoor recreation, which would be for soccer facilities inside. Then they've also got a 40,000 square foot office building. First floor would be retail, second floor would be office, so about half and half, 20 and 20. And then they've got a 125 room hotel planned between that office building and the Civic Center. They're in various stages of getting letters of intent and contracts executed, but we are targeting a closing this summer on a bunch of land, and then they're going to try to proceed with those vertical things.
One thing to know about this site, though, is it's a long-term investment for the city of Commerce City. When the deal was made with Cronkite 10, 11 years ago, part of what made all of this possible is Cronkite invested a lot of money in this site. And so tax revenue, every bit of tax revenue that comes off this site for about another, how many years? Another 16 years. For another 16 years, every nickel of tax revenue that is generated on this site, including at the stadium, any development that occurs around the stadium, goes back to Cronkite to retire their debt that they put into this site. That's what made the whole thing possible in 04, 05. It includes property tax, it includes sales tax. Once that 16-year clock runs out, then the city will start to benefit from that tax revenue. But we've got a ways to wait before we start to see direct benefit. We've had other indirect benefits. It's been an image enhancer for our community. But in terms of direct tax impact, we don't get any. Other questions? Go ahead, Dennis.
I have two questions. What's the city envision for the Greyhound Park? I know that you're talking about developers. And is the city looking at bringing the seat tax initiative back to the voters again anytime soon?
Let me answer the second question, and I'll have Jim talk about the dog track. Seat tax. When the city council, well, let me go back probably 3 years. The city council at the time appointed stakeholders, residents, business people, representatives from nonprofits to an entity called the Quality Community Initiative stakeholder group. It was their job to look through this long list of capital improvements that the city needs and look at available sources of funding. What resulted from that is the Issue 2K ballot language that City Council ultimately put on the ballot. City Council, based on the recommendations from the stakeholder group, was initially looking at a longer list of capital projects and a longer list of funding sources, and the seat tax was one of those. City Council spent last summer going through all of that information, doing some polling in the community, having community meetings. They ultimately shortened the list of projects and the list of revenue sources. The list of projects got shorter to those projects that I mentioned, and the list of funding sources was reduced to just one, just the tax increase. So City Council considered it as recently as last summer, decided not to ask voters to increase the seat tax. I expect it'll come up again from time to time. but no specific timeline right now where the city council is going to consider it again. Jim, you want to talk about uses on the dog track?
Yes. So we went through an RFQ process, request for qualifications, last fall. We had 2 developer teams that submitted. Both of them presented on February 10th. So if you want to see some of the details, that meeting I know was public and recorded and should be on the website. But subsequent to that meeting, one of the developer teams withdrew. So we are down to a company called Real Estate Generation, or Regen, and they've done various projects, 8th in Colorado, Mercy Hospital area, Gates Rubber. They were also part of the team that helped us with the demolition. So they're very familiar with the site and some of the environmental issues there. But in general, their proposal is to develop housing on the east half of the site. So if you extend Parkway Drive to the north, it kind of cuts the site in half. East side would be housing. We think, based on the feasibility study, it's between 250 and maybe even 400 units on there, depending on the density we come up with. Would be owner-occupied as well as some rental. One of their unique concepts that they presented is this idea of a manufactured housing or systems-built housing. And this would not be the trailers or even the manufactured homes that we might be familiar with, but they're talking about something that would be constructed in a factory on the property. There would be a training component that would be made available to our residents and some of the students coming out of District 14. And so there'd be a training facility as well as manufacturing these homes, and then they'd be located on the property. The balance of that west half of the site, they're still showing as some office uses. There's also some retail that could serve the neighborhood. They think on their preliminary site plan, there's an opportunity for as many as 4 sit-down pad restaurants. So not quick serve, not fast food, but real sit-down restaurants. All of this has to be figured out during their pro forma and everything, and how much they're going to put into the deal and how much we're going to put in. But we're really encouraged with their concept. We think they've vetted it as best they can so far, and we're ready to go tonight, hopefully.
Related to that, we have already carved off 2.5 acres at the very southeast corner of the site for the Boys and Girls Club. It'll be right at what would be the northwest corner of 62nd and Holly, or the very southeast corner of the site. Boys and Girls Club is actively fundraising, and they hope to be submitting plans for our approval and permits this year. They hope to start construction next year. So the very first use on site could very well be that Boys and Girls Club right in the southeast corner. Other questions? Other questions? No other questions? If you think of one after today, send me an email. If you think it's one Jim can answer, send him an email. We're happy to answer questions. We also, I don't know if we've done this yet, but we try to collect questions at other all-hands meetings and put them on the internet as well, so you can see what sort of things came up. I'll tell you, the questions you asked today were questions that came up in some of the other meetings as well. Folks are always curious about what's going on elsewhere in the community, which has us thinking about other ways we can share that information before an annual all-hands meeting. So, no other questions? Are you stretching, or do you have a question? Stretching. Well, I'm going to stick around for a little bit, so if you have a question today, I'm happy to answer it. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming.
Also been streamlining the state government, making it more efficient. 3 years ago, we started with a budget that was facing staggering shortfalls. Balancing the books is not sexy stuff, but if the budget is wrong, nothing else could be right. Just ask Congress. When it comes to this nitty-gritty of governing,